This is a quick and easy reference for TOEFL speaking templates. I have longer videos that show an in-depth explanation for each question type. I'll put a link to each of those videos below, but I wanted to have a kind of quick video just so you can reference if you just had a question about the templates. So let's start with question 1. We'll go through all 4 questions, and this is where you give your opinion, and you start with your opinion. Personally, I strongly believe that. And then maybe an example, I remember when. On top of that, maybe you think of another reason for your opinion and another example, and if you have time, a conclusion. This is what it looks like when it's written out. This is an example written out. As you can see, most of it is my own words, your own words. The parts highlighted in green are your template. Remember, the most important thing is for you to sound natural and conversational. So I encourage you to check out our 26 plus guide. I'll have more kind of examples of templates in that description below. You'll have a link to that guide. It's free. And you can also make your own template because you don't want to sound really unnatural. Like if we use this sample for template number 2, if you say the reading passage announces a change on campus, in particular, it doesn't sound very natural, it doesn't sound very comfortable, so you want to make sure that you sound natural and comfortable no matter what you say. The template is designed to help you know how to start and know how to go from the first point to the second point to the third point and to conclude in time. So for question 2, you have the reading passage, you introduce it, and then you talk about the listening passage, which is a conversation, and then you explain the person's opinion in the listening passage. It'll look something like this on test day, where you have a reading passage. It goes away, so make sure you read carefully and take some notes. And then you listen to a conversation between a man and a woman. And then the question is pretty similar most of the time. They ask about either the man or woman's opinion, and they want to know what their opinion is. And you have to summarize the change and summarize their opinion that they talk about. The question format is almost always the same. The woman expresses her opinion on blank, state her opinion, and the reason she gives for holding that opinion. Okay? And when you give your response, you start by talking about the reading, and then you talk about the person in the conversation, and you talk about their opinion and the reasons for their opinion. Okay? Again, the template is just a small amount of the response. Most of it is your own words, and you're reporting information from the reading and listening. Just be aware that sometimes you'll get a letter for task 2 instead of an announcement, and when it's a letter, it's pretty much the same template except the introduction is slightly different. The letter proposes a change on campus. That's it. Moving on, template number 3. So this is again a reading passage and listening passage, but this one is a academic topic. So you introduce the topic, and then you talk about the lecture and what the professor says about the topic, and the other example the professor gives. Usually the professor will give 2 examples about, for example, swarm intelligence. So here you learn about swarm intelligence, and then you listen to a lecture where the professor talks about swarm intelligence. And usually he or she will give 2 examples. So using the examples from the lecture, explain the concept of swarm intelligence. So that's the question, and the question is almost always the same, asks you to basically explain the topic. The topics are usually about biology, psychology, business, or history and art. These are the most common topics. You might get something different, but that's most common. So here's the template. You talk about the reading, and then you move on to the listening, and you talk about the professor, and then you talk about the second example the professor talks about. Don't worry if you don't have time for the conclusion. It's like an extra 5 seconds in your pocket. If you have time, include the conclusion. If you don't have time, don't worry about it. That's for all the questions. Last template for task number 4, where you just listen to a lecture. Professor goes into detail about the topic and you define it. And then you talk about the first example and the second example. So pretty much the same as task number 3, except there's no reading passage. You only listen. So that's why it's a little bit more difficult than task number 3. The question is almost always the same. Using the examples from the lecture, explain the concept of, and then the topic, right? Again, similar topics, biology, psychology, business, or history and art. Here's what an example looks like with the template. And again, don't worry if you don't have time for the conclusion, but you start by introducing the topic, then you talk about how the lecture describes the topic, and then you talk about the second example she gives about the topic. Okay, so those are the speaking templates. If you need more help, this is particularly for students who have taken the test at least once. I recommend speaking group classes because you get feedback from a teacher, you get support with a group of students, you also get all the practice you need, all the practice tests and all the questions you have answered. So it's really personalized feedback, even though you're working with a group. It's less than a month, so yeah, check it out. TST Prep, TOEFL speaking group classes. And if you want this price, it's only for the YouTube audience. So make sure that you follow the link in the description to that. And don't forget the 26 guide, but I'm going to put a link to another video where you can actually practice some of these templates, and I hope you find it helpful. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.